This is Motorsport Radio.
Welcome to Motorsport Radio. My name's Andy Lloyd, and tonight we have the great honour of speaking to a rising star of GT racing, Mr. Tom Wood. Tom, hi.
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you for having me.
I'm very well. How are you?
Not too bad at all, thank you. Yeah, all good.
Good. You've had you've packed a fascinating career into just a few very short years. Looking at your CV, you spent a season in the British GT Championship. You took your career into Europe in 2019 with a season in the GT4 European Series, and followed that with a season in the NLS, what was formerly the VLN with Walkenhorst Motorsport last year. For our listeners not familiar with the NLS, could you describe the challenges of that series? Because that's very different racing from a standard 2-hour sprint format GT race, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I was racing in the BMW 240i Cup this year, which is one of the most competitive classes in the NLS series. But racing around the Nurburgring Nordschleife was just a completely different experience, almost another discipline of motor racing, almost racing around that place. I mean, the traffic, there's sometimes up to 200 cars going around at the same time. And yeah, I mean, the 4-hour races, they're almost fairly short for the amount of time you spend going around a lap. So very, very intense, but one of the best experiences I've had in a race car throughout my career, for sure.
What guided you down the route of the NLS after the GT4 European Series in 2019?
I just thought it'd be a great opportunity for myself to partner up with a factory team in Walkenhorst Motorsport. They've run the GT3 BMWs for a number of years, and they're one of the best factory teams that BMW have got. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity through Tim Sugden to go out to Germany and race for the shortened NLS series in the 240i Cup. So I'd love to be back there very, very soon, hopefully in a GT4 or GT3 car. But yeah, it was a great opportunity to partner myself with a factory team in Walkenhorst.
Because you had some excellent teammates, Josh Hislop, Will Tregertha, Aidan Reed, Joe Van Wieter, who's also got prototype experience as well. You must have learned a lot from that season, didn't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we all jumped in the car together, having never driven the Nurburgring Nordschleife before, and we were straight on the pace, which was great. I learned a lot from Job, especially working with him and the team, and also Will Tregertha, who was my latter teammate in the season. He'd driven the track a few times before and raced there the previous season in both the 240i and the GT4 car. So there was a lot to learn from him, and obviously in all aspects there was a huge amount to learn. It was a very, very steep learning curve, but yeah, it's just as I said, a completely new way of thinking about endurance racing really around that place. You've almost got to commit to everything you ever do around there, in terms of the racing, the traffic and everything like that, as well as actually driving the car and everything. So yeah, great experience.
Because you mentioned that you hadn't driven the circuit before, and that is a huge circuit to learn. How do you prepare before you go to a circuit like that for the first time?
I mean, I did spend a lot of time on the sim before I went out there. So actually, when I turned up to do my permit test in the little Suzuki Swift we did it in, I was already fairly familiar with the circuit, but nothing can compare you with the undulations, the bumps, the traffic, as I said. So it was almost like we had to relearn the whole layout and bumps of the circuit, comparing it with the simulator. yeah, starting off in a Suzuki Swift definitely helped me, and then built up to the 240i, which is actually a really fun car to drive, and feels pretty fast even in one of those things around that place.
And what were the highlights of last season for you?
I think the last race of the season, where we qualified in the top 6, but in practice we were P1 overall in the class, which really gave us a lot of confidence, and especially myself, to be at the very top of one of the most competitive classes in the series. So unfortunately we couldn't convert it in the race, but to be on top in practice, where everyone is trying to find the limits of the cars on the track, was great. And also in one of the practices the weekend before, I was second in class in the wet, which was probably the most intimidating and frightening thing I've done in a race car before, aquaplaning at 240 kilometers an hour down the Dottinger.
Sure.
But yeah, those were the two highlights for sure.
Sure, because you graduated from karting in 2015, like a lot of young drivers do. Do you still keep in contact with the karting paddock? Do you mentor any of the young drivers coming through in karting at the moment?
I did start to a few years ago. I do find that the cars and the karting scene is very, very different in terms of the atmosphere and the whole attitude. So I do miss karting a fair bit. I've got to say, you're out every weekend pretty much, racing and in the British Championships and everything like that, and even at world level. So I do miss that aspect, but I also enjoy the professionalism of the car racing, and especially the GT scene, and the fact that you do share the stints with other drivers, and you do feel like you're working towards something that can be quite successful in the future, and the dream of being a world champion and a factory driver is very much in sight in cars. So yeah, I miss karting a lot in terms of the excitement that the racing brought and everything, but yeah, I enjoy GT racing especially just as much.
Because you moved from karts into the Ginetta Junior Championship. So was it always your intention from karting that you would focus on GTs and not maybe look at a single-seater route?
For sure, we did look at the single-seater route. That obviously, my dream as a youngster was always to go to Formula One and be world champion, just like a lot of other drivers. But unfortunately, the financial backing wasn't quite there at the time to move into single seaters. And when I joined the Ginetta Junior Championship, which is, as the one of the most competitive, or if not the most competitive, junior series in the world, we decided to stick with the GT scene, and it was presented a more realistic journey, if you like, to make it as a factory driver and to be a paid professional.
I mean, we're currently in a very dynamic environment with the world in the middle of, or possibly coming out of, a pandemic. What are your current thoughts about what you might be driving this season?
I mean, it's obviously that time of the year where we're trying to focus on getting the funds together and getting the deals together. But for sure, my aim would be to race in Europe again. I feel like it offers the most opportunities that there are, and I feel like the racing and the competition is a lot stronger in Europe. Not to say, the UK scene isn't competitive at all, which it is. But I think the European GT racing scene is booming, especially with the customer teams. So yeah, I'm going to focus my efforts on getting out to Europe and winning some races ultimately.
Now, as a driver, funding, partnerships and sponsorship is a very important part of the work that you have to do before you get on the grid. And I noticed on your social media that you've partnered with Pulse Natural Energy for this year. What do you as a young driver have to bring to a commercial partnership like that to make it attractive to the brand?
It's a very good question because sponsorship and partnerships nowadays in motorsport are a lot different than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago, where you could sort of get away with putting a logo on the side of the car, and for the company to be satisfied. Nowadays, markets are a lot more competitive and a lot more saturated, so you've always got to be on your game to try and look for opportunities for other businesses, like I have with Pulse Energy, to try and get their brand out there in a different way and to try and introduce them to new clients ultimately. Because of course, every aim for every business is to try and sell more product or a bigger service. So to try and help them do that, which I feel is a great, motorsport is a great tool for that. I feel, that's what you've got to aim for nowadays. Being a racing driver isn't as easy as it sort of sounds from the outside. You've got to be an athlete, a great driver, and also a businessman at the same time.
I think to those people involved with motor racing, they fully understand that. I think as an outsider looking in, you rarely understand that. You think you just turn up, put the keys in the ignition, and off you go. And it's not that. But I also saw on social media that you worked with Polar Racing, a rallycross school in Finland earlier this year.
Yeah, so it was announced a month ago or so now that I'm going to work with a race school out in Finland. So what that sort of entails is clients from all over the world can pay to go along to Finland, either in the summer or spring months or the winter months where it's snowing, and actually race against each other on either the snow, ice, or gravel, and depending on the season, obviously. So what my job is to instruct these clients from all over the world to race each other on in these conditions. So it's super exciting. Big thanks to Ralph from Polar Racing for getting me involved. I'm super excited to start. Never been to Finland, never driven on ice either, but it should be an absolutely wonderful experience. And I can't wait to get started.
So could in the future Rallycross be part of your schedule, possibly?
I mean, maybe in the future. I've always admired those guys for doing what they do. The racing's super tough, super close. I wouldn't mind to go in the future, maybe, but I think I'll stick to tarmac and the sunny circuits at the moment for sure. Yeah.
Well, Tom, very best of luck for 2021. Very much looking forward to seeing you out on circuit. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you very much for having me, and speak to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom.